Story 1. I would hope that I would change my mind about anything, given good enough evidence. If I had to pick one, I guess I would say it is pretty hard to imagine evidence leading me away from my opposition to slavery. Story 2. People who believe in a flat earth do not really believe it. They do it for attention or to feel superior. This is more probable than them genuinely believing it. Story 3. Assisted suicide should be legal if the person goes through the proper channels and is determined to be competent, especially for those suffering from terminal illnesses. Story 4. Peace of mind is more important than being liked. I would rather disappoint someone else than keep disappointing myself. Story 5. The United States should tax the wealthy and provide universal health care to all of its citizens regardless of employment, just like every other civilized nation in the world. Story 6. I know this part of Reddit is likely to agree that my choice is not controversial. A close family member is an obstetrician-gynecologist surgeon. The topic of abortion often comes up when I mention this while talking about my family. You might be surprised how many times in my life I've been asked whether I have children. I've said no, explained why I don't want to have them, and the person who asked has immediately lowered their opinion of me to my face, or told me I'm being selfish, conceited, stubborn, living my life wrong, not considering the plight of the unborn, or offered some other convoluted, impersonal, and ridiculous rationalization that did not apply to the circumstances of my life. Pro-choice means I, a man, should also be allowed to choose not to have children if neither of us want them. Pro-choice means I should be allowed to consider the state of the world and come to the conclusion that I don't want to force a child to experience the next 50 to 100 years of difficulties. Story 7. 90% of the time, parents complain that their adult children will not talk to them anymore. This is a simple consequence of their actions, which indicates poor parenting or disrespecting their adult children's decisions. The other 10% generally consists of situations such as adult children dealing with drug addictions, mental health issues, and abusive partners or cult-like situations isolating them from their loved ones. You can easily identify these situations because the adult children provide detailed accounts without conveniently withholding information or pretending to be unaware. Story 8. All food is fusion cuisine. Nothing is sacred. Tradition is a stepping stone on the journey, not an anchor weighing you down. Put pineapple on pizza. Break your pasta in half. Make ice cream out of Bradford pear flowers. As long as you are not forcing me to eat something, make and have whatever you want. I do not give a damn. People who gatekeep something as subjective as taste are not only boring, they actively hold humankind back. For example, imagine if the Italians never adopted tomatoes or squash, which are famously native to the Americas, because they were against trying and incorporating new ingredients. Those are signature ingredients people take for granted, when in fact neither of those things are Italian. Story 9. Performing any non-therapeutic permanent body modifications on a newborn or any other non-consenting person is abuse. Story 10. Most people around the world are pretty decent, and it is mainly tribalism that makes everyone hate each other. Story 11. Everyone, and I mean literally everyone, deserves to be housed and fed for free or at much lower costs. Story 12. People who commit sexual offenses against children should be removed from the population as soon as they are convicted. Story 13. Bodily autonomy is an inalienable human right. Forcing someone to use their body to sustain the life of another against their will is equivalent to slavery. Story 14. Vaccines are very safe, statistically speaking, and those who cannot have them rely on the rest of us getting vaccinated. 99.9% of us are fine. Story 15. People need to be forgiven when they make a genuine change for the better. No shaming individuals with substance use disorders for using drugs. No ostracizing former racists. Allowing people to learn from their mistakes. Actual forgiveness and atonement are powerful. Story 16. I will never understand, with all that we know about addiction, why alcohol is still normalized as acceptable. Story 17. Nazi ideology is primarily a power and control issue and secondarily a race issue. It is a significant reason why Nazis and pedophilia are often found co-occurring. For reference, Nazis seek power, and to obtain it, they scapegoat a race. On a lighter note, Box spiral macaroni and cheese is the superior noodle. Story 18. Not really an opinion, more of a fact. Climate change is real and is occurring at an alarming rate due to humanity's reliance on fossil fuels. Story 19. Circumcision on babies is wrong unless it is medically necessary. The same applies to piercing a baby's ears. I will not debate this topic. It is interesting how the title asks for an opinion that cannot be changed, yet people continue to argue. Story 20. Billionaires should not exist. Once someone has reached the $900 million mark, every dollar beyond should be spent on education, housing, healthcare, transportation, infrastructure, restoration, job training, military and technology research, and living wage payments, freedom dividend, for those earning less than $50,000 a year. Adjusted for inflation, the federal minimum wage should be $26 an hour. The interest generated by multi-billionaires alone would help solve homelessness, healthcare costs, crime, hunger, dilapidated housing, farm subsidies, environmental issues, education, feeding all children, paying teachers a proper salary, and training police for longer than 6 weeks or months. Story 21. No one should hoard more than 50 million, and everyone, individuals, corporations, and governments, should all do everything possible to reduce emissions. A complete change of lifestyles and money flow is necessary. Story 22. Legalizing prostitution and treating sex workers as individuals would eliminate many problems associated with that type of work. Sex workers should be required to undergo regular sexually transmitted disease testing, similar to adult film performers. Story 23. People would rather take action against pedophiles after they offend and are caught than research why these individuals offend initially and prevent harm before it occurs. Story 24. Economics is a human construct. We invented the rules so we can change them. We can make things more affordable. I know it is possible. Story 25. Sex is a desire, not a necessity. You will not die without it. My mind will never change about this, so do not even try. It will only be a waste of your time. Story 26. The whole point of government is to improve everyone's lives by working together for the benefit of all, accomplishing tasks that are too difficult or inefficient for individuals to do alone. Story 27. Human rights and equality are above everything else. You cannot argue that a human does not deserve their basic needs. Story 28. Although I am in favor of marijuana legalization, I truly believe one can become addicted to cannabis. I say this because I was a cannabis burnout in college who wasted all of his savings on cannabis and alcohol during my 5 years of barely passing college. Story 29. I'm sure there is something, but I try my best not to hold beliefs that nothing could change. Once you internalize something that deeply, you restrict yourself from learning. Even if you are right, it is not helpful. Story 30. I do not know if there is anything that I could not change my mind about, but the closest would be, just do not be unkind to each other. Story 31. I truly believe that anyone has the ability to explore a creative craft. Given enough peace and time to learn, I think anyone can draw, paint, compose, design, craft, hammer, or forge masterpieces. I used to not be able to draw well, and I'm still no Picasso, but I've spent enough time and put enough lines on paper to build some confidence and can say I draw now. If you're reading this thinking you're not creative, I don't believe it, and neither should you. You just have to, 1. Want to try. Sit down and actually try for about 15 minutes with something basic and see what comes of it. Accept that you will not be good at first. Expect to cringe and laugh at your first few attempts. Bonus 4. You may find you have a knack for it or really enjoy the craft you chose to explore. There is one downside to this. You may find a new hobby that starts to consume your funds. Aside from that, creating is especially good for the soul. Story 32. A perfect bra never exists, so you keep going back and trying another one that is marginally better than the last. Large bra companies are out to scam women out of their money. Story 33. Churches are a money-making scheme. Religions are entirely about power. Collectively, they are the worst invention in all of mankind and should be taxed like lottery winners. Story 34. Deliberately killing babies and children, first by bombing and shooting them and then by systematically starving them, is immoral and completely evil. That this is somehow a controversial opinion baffles and sickens me. Free Palestine. Story 35. Transgender people need to be recognized as their identified gender, not their biological sex. Homeless people need to be treated like everyone else when they are in need of help. Sex workers are agents of healing and maintaining sanity. They should not be criminalized or shamed, nor should their clients. Story 36. The 14th Amendment's guarantee against state deprivation of liberty includes the right to privacy and to control one's own bodily autonomy. Story 37. You can call it an opinion. I call it civil rights. Those sorts of things qualify. I do not mean you personally, just someone other than myself. Story 38. There can never be an ethical billionaire. I firmly believe that if you are a billionaire, you are a terrible person, and nothing can change my mind on that. Story 39. I am right to be uncertain and skeptical, and not believe the religious books we have today. Religion was created to control people. Story 40. Transgender people should be able to live in peace. Anyone who disagrees because they think being transgender is unnatural should throw their phones into the ocean. Story 41. Christians are, for the most part, the least Christ-like people in existence. Story 42. I became a vegetarian when I was 13. It was the first thing I decided to believe in on my own. I believe that this is the right way to live for me. I believe that eating animals will one day be widely rejected as we learn more about animal intelligence and emotions, ecological impacts, cruelty in the industry, and effects on health. Story 43. I do not hold any opinion so firmly that it cannot be changed if you present me with compelling evidence. Story 44. I do not need an intermediary to talk to or curse at God. No pope, clergy member, priest, imam, rabbi, or other typically male figurehead stands in my way to receive spiritual care. My connection to the divine is direct, personal, and fully my own. Story 45. America was never great, has never been great, and it lost its chance to be great after World War II. The rest of the world is tired of America being that guy at the party. Story 46. Democrats and Republicans are basically the same, or Republicans are better with the economy. No, just no. Story 47. Gender dysphoria is a type of mental health condition. Like other psychiatric and emotional issues, it can often be treated with therapy and medication. Story 48. If nothing can change my mind on it, it is probably going to be a nostalgic kind of thing, like candy tasting way better when I was a child, or maybe what I consider the best ice cream flavor. Story 49. However you group human beings, whether by race, religion, nationality, ethnicity, culture, sexuality, favorite color, or preferred pizza toppings, a small percentage of that group will be full-time difficult and unpleasant people. An equally small percentage will be all-around wonderful human beings, and the vast majority will be somewhere in the middle, capable of being either unpleasant or kind depending on the circumstances and whether they are having a bad day or a good day. Story 50. I would not say nothing could change my mind, but any claims people make about the supernatural psychics, religious beliefs, tarot, astrology, ghosts, witchcraft are all false. Not one shred of empirical evidence is presented, and when put under scientific scrutiny, their claims always fall apart. Rest in peace, James Randi. Story 51. For me, it is about being kind no matter the situation. The world needs more of it, not less. I believe it costs nothing but can change everything. Story 52. My belief is in justice, equality, freedom, and peace. You will never convince me that all are not equal. You will never convince me that war is good, or that peace should not be permanent. You will never convince me that people should not have the freedom to choose how to live their lives, as long as it does not hurt others. And you will never convince me that justice should not be served. Story 53. There is no way that in all of the universe's infinity we are the only sentient life forms. Just no way. Story 54. The three Abrahamic religions are often viewed differently by various individuals and communities. It is important to approach discussions about religions with respect and understanding to promote peaceful coexistence. Story 55. Mine is that God, the universe, or the source is only interested in our happiness and well-being and is not about punishing people. The fire and brimstone rhetoric is a man-made construct to keep humans living in fear, obligation, and guilt. I grew up in Roman Catholicism, and as a child I was terrified of sinning and terrified God would banish me to hell. It is all about control in organized religion. I now have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and I have never been happier or more at peace. Story 56. All living beings on this earth are intelligent, conscious, have feelings, and communicate. They just do it in a different way than we do, including planet Earth. Everything is like one of those cartoons where everything moves and has happy faces. We just can't see it. Story 57. There is nothing that anyone should hold on to without being willing to change their position. If someone is ignorant and there is enough evidence showing their belief is wrong, then they should change that belief. Otherwise, they are willingly and blindly ignorant. Religions and political movements are examples. Story 58. With a proper diet, exercise, and a good sleep pattern, many people diagnosed by a psychiatrist would not need medication. Story 59. Driving faster does not in itself make you a worse driver, although most poor drivers tend to drive faster. Story 60. Immersing children into your religion is child neglect and wrong. It is one thing to share your faith. It is another to force it on your children. Story 61. A police officer who does their job correctly never appears in the news. Only those who make mistakes or behave poorly do. That is why the perception of police in the United States of America is negative. Story 62. The fact is, I do not believe in God. No matter what, nothing will ever make me believe in one. Especially because if God were real, it would have to be either the most apathetic or evil thing in existence. Story 63. There is a cure for cancer. Pharmaceutical companies profit too much from chemotherapy. The same applies to diabetes and insulin. Story 64. We need to explore space to survive as a species in the long term. Keeping all our eggs in one basket is a recipe for disaster. Story 65. I want the Chevrolet Camaro to remain discontinued. I have zero faith that General Motors would not turn it into some kind of four-door electric sport utility vehicle if they brought it back. Story 66. I will defend Molly Ringwald passionately. She is not a bad actress, and I am tired of hearing otherwise. She is also an outspoken supporter of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and others community and a dedicated feminist who attends protests, aware she could be arrested by oppressive forces, yet she continues to march. She is the aunt I wish I had. Story 67. Jesus Christ is real. He died on the cross for our sins, was buried, resurrected, and ascended to heaven. Story 68. It is easier to recognize the bad or insincere intentions in a serious relationship than most people think. These intentions can be seen from a distance. No matter how often people say that others are good at pretending, that is not true. Story 69. The legendary warrior Guan Yu was known to be many hands taller than those around him, had bushy eyebrows, a magnificent beard, and a strange peach-colored skin that flushed red when excited or angry. He seemed like a Viking or someone from another place who somehow ended up in China and adapted, which led to some intense artwork depictions of him. Story 70. All autistic children are capable of learning regardless of their developmental levels. It may take longer and different tactics may be needed, but they can learn right from wrong, patience, and how to accept no as an answer. They can understand that it is not acceptable to attack others when they are upset because things did not go their way. It is ableist to believe they cannot be taught these things or that they cannot reach their potential. Teaching needs to start when they are young. However, many parents enable their children's problematic behavior by making excuses and giving in to every demand to avoid tantrums, which ultimately harms the child in the long run. A tantrum differs from a meltdown as it is not caused by sensory overload or distress. A tantrum occurs because the child wants their way, and when told no, they try to turn it into a yes through physical aggression. When parents give in, the tantrums stop. This pattern is common, seen on social media platforms and in everyday life. Families often face crises due to not addressing problematic behavior early. Weak or inconsistent parenting can be more disabling to the child than the disability itself. Finally, it is important to acknowledge that some autistic children may have challenging behaviors. Story 71. I am intelligent about the things I like. Some people think I am smart, but I am not. I just liked reading and school as a child, so I was good at those things. Overall, I am not very smart. Story 72. If you have to think of an incredibly complex circumstance in which you must force society to accept an ethically subversive or morally wrong action you want permission to do without consequence, there is no good reason to do that, and you do not deserve to be allowed to do so. Nobody will ever need to use a racial slur to defuse a time bomb and save a city of 1 million people. That situation will never happen. It is safe to dismiss it as ridiculous, along with the idea itself. Story 73. Skinamarink is a terrible movie that is bait for YouTubers to make videos on. That also applies to most analog horror. Story 74. The universe is amenable to rational explanations. However, Gödel's incompleteness theorem has wider implications. It implies that there may be true statements about our universe that we will be unable to prove from within our universe. Story 75. The third How to Train Your Dragon movie is one of the worst sequels of all time. It breaks the established story and damages the characters. Not only was it bad, but it completely undermines the messages of the first two movies and replaces them with negative ones. I respect you if you like it. I myself enjoy things many people dislike. However, there is no force on earth that will make me believe it is a good movie or a fitting conclusion to the franchise. Story 76. Jimmy Savile and the British Broadcasting Corporation was a technological intelligence tool for the police, security services, military, and National Health Service. We only saw the positive requests on television, but behind the scenes, the British Broadcasting Corporation received letters from children reporting harmful activities to stop. The British Broadcasting Corporation passed information to the police, National Health Service, military, and Department of Education for investigation. Some human behaviors are so prevalent that famous figures, some deceased and some living, are now used to educate people worldwide. Story 77. The Japanese idol scene is 10 times more problematic in nature than any Western celebrity scene. It is often dismissed as just the culture, which enables the behavior to continue. Story 78. The purpose of life is to evolve. As humans, we can consciously choose to evolve ourselves mentally and emotionally. Story 79. Women should be encouraged to follow their dreams and goals, and should never be defined in relation to their submissiveness or subservience to others. Story 80. Artificial intelligence is a product created by individuals who see no value in art beyond a superficial sense of aesthetics. These people operate like automatons and are making the world more autonomous to justify their own existence. Story 81. I have two that I am pretty firm on. Snakes, turtles, and lizards should be treated like all other wildlife. I hear many stories of people killing these poor animals out of fear or taking them home as pets. They should be left alone and treated with respect. Also, people should have much more education about them. Sometimes the stories I hear are so exaggerated. It chased me. No, it did not. Also, spanking is not okay. I grew up with it. Most of my peers grew up with it. Just because we turned out okay does not mean this is a useful parenting strategy. I have never laid a hand on any of my 4 children, and they are all very well behaved. I wish people treated their children with more respect. I believe that is what creates good people. Story 82. The Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy is peak blockbuster cinema, and the Tom Holland trilogy is borderline poor. Story 83. Pedophiles, child abusers, rapists, and people committing animal cruelty who are proven to be guilty with very high or complete certainty should receive the death penalty invariably. Anyone capable of committing these crimes is not fit to participate in a healthy and civilized society. These are premeditated crimes or long-term offenses, indicating at best an unforgivable level of incompetence or neglect, or outright unforgivable evil. There should be due process and a few years of incarceration for appeals, but not decades, 5 years at most. While the argument for wrongful convictions is understandable, most offenders do not change their behavior. False testimonies could be largely prevented if those providing false testimony received the same punishment that the wrongly accused would have received if proven guilty. Story 84. That toilet water is the same as the water we drink. Stupid, I know, but I refuse to think otherwise. Story 85. If there is a minimum wage, there needs to be a maximum wage. I do not think there is any good reason one single person should be making over $20 million a year while many people are struggling. Story 86. All right, here goes. I think only men and women who own land, have children within the bounds of a marriage, or own a business should be allowed to vote. Unless you are in the military. Military personnel get a vote every time. You have to have skin in the game, an understanding of economics, or a meaningful contribution to society. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.